Sukuna unleashed his terrifying Doamin expansion, utterly destroying the main cast and especially Yuji, taking Yuji's leg clean off, with him finally unveiling and revealing the true name of his curse technique, with us finding out that his flames technique name is Kitchen Hearth, as he unleashes the flames at the end of this chapter within his monstrous domain. It was a wild chapter with a lot of new information in regards to Sukuna's technique, Uyui's technique, the soul swapping, and also how Yuji used reverse curse technique. But mainly, Sukuna went on a tear this chapter and it was just crazy to say the least. So let's just get into it. Be sure to leave a like, it helps out a lot, thank you. And of course, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for a ton of consistent and quality JJK content just like this. Less than 10% of people who watch my videos are subscribed, so if you love JJK, I assure you, you won't regret subscribing. And of course, thank you to these special grade members as well, it is always much appreciated. Alright, let's get right into this. And this chapter was beyond crazy. I mean, first of all, getting Sukuna learning the name of his flames. So the name is Kitchen Hearth, which a hearth, at least by Google's definition, is the place in a home where fire is or was traditionally kept for home heating and for cooking. It's an old school definition, and it's an old school thing that Sukuna's using, which of course makes sense since he's from 1,000 years ago. So if we do see Yuji use the flames, which I do believe he will, I'll explain that later since it is already confirmed that Yuji does have the flames too. As Sukuna explained in the previous chapter, because Yuji's from a different era and from a different generation, Yuji's flames probably won't be called Kitchen Hearth, but maybe Kitchen Stove or something along those lines, maybe something more modern. But yes, we finally do get a confirmation that one, the flames are cooking flames that you use, to cook food. So this is a theory that I've had for a long time that not just me, but many people have had. I was talking about this, funny enough, in the prediction stream from yesterday, where it was a big talking point in that stream that Sukuna's curse technique has to do with being a chef, because even the malevolent kitchen that you see in Crunchyroll is not even that much of a mistranslation, though it's not the best translation in the world. I've heard from other people, and again, I don't speak Japanese, so I can't confirm this for myself, but I've heard from many people that when they call Sukuna's domain expansion Malevolent Kitchen, it's not inaccurate, because the word shrine, at least in Japanese, apparently in older Japanese, can be used as a place where you store important relics and such, but it can also be a place where you can store things such as a kitchen cabinet. And when you take that fact, that in the Japanese itself, it does have a connection to kitchen and storing things in a kitchen cabinet, the actual domain expansion name, and even the curse technique, its name shrine in and of itself having a connection to kitchens in Japanese. And when you also take into the fact that when he was fighting Mahoraga in the manga, GEGE directly shows us comparing dismantle and cleave both to kitchen knives, meaning that in portrayal, they are meant to be kitchen tools. And this is all beside the fact that there's a lot of things. There have apparently been some mistranslations in the way Sukuna speaks, because the way he speaks, at least in the Japanese, and this isn't even picked up in the TCB, but he speaks almost like a chef, or not exactly like that, but something along those lines where he uses those sort of phrases. For example, we do get to see this in the manga a couple times, at least in the English, when he was talking to Gojo and he says, "First, I'll remove those scales," which is what you do when you're cooking fish. Or when he was fighting Ryu, he says, "I'll fillet you." Again, exactly like how you'd cut a fish. So even the way Sukuna speaks, he speaks like he's a chef, like he's cooking things. And again, Sukuna is someone who does like to eat a lot. He is a cannibal. Eating is one of his favorite hobbies. And when you take all that into consideration, it's why, like I was saying in the stream from yesterday, and like a majority of people have been saying, it's not a groundbreaking theory that I'm saying, it's how we always knew that Sukuna's technique was related to the kitchen. And this is important. The reason I'm re-saying all of this is because in the fanbook itself, it states that both the flames and the slashes are all under the umbrella of one curse technique. They're not separate curse technique. The flames, it's not a new technique, but it all is underneath the technique of shrine, but the different attributes that shrine has. And the craziest part is that the fanbook says we know that it has at least 2 different attributes, those 2 being slashes and flames, but it's saying at least, meaning it could be possible that it has more, which of course would make sense. So if it is going with the themes of the kitchen, an interesting theory that someone said in the previous stream was that what if Sukuna could have a ice technique or a cold technique? And the reason he said this is because if you have the fire to cook things like a hearth or a stove, you have the cleave and dismantle to cut things up like in a kitchen, then it would make sense that you'd have a freezer or a fridge to store your meats in as well. And this could be something mainly for Yuji because he's a modern day sorcerer using the technique, so maybe his would be more related to freezers and fridges and all that if he does get those abilities, which I do think he will. But also it brings into possibility that Sukuna may have a water technique as well, because water is something that you use when you're cooking and also to clean stuff as well. So it's used quite a lot in the kitchen. So that's sort of where I'm placing my money on for Sukuna's technique. It's going to be slashes, flames, ice/cold, and water too. And do remember that Yuji has the technique shrine, so he will get everything that Sukuna has. And again, at least going by what the fanbook says, Yuji 100% does have the flames. He may manifest it in a different way because he's from a different era, but he does have the flames just like Sukuna, and he will pull it out at some point throughout the fight. Now let's get into Sukuna's insane domain expansion. And there was a lot of mistranslation going on when this was happening because some account was tweeting out misinfo, and for the record, like, no, it is not the Chimera Shadow Garden, it has nothing to do with the 10 Shadows. At least it wasn't said in this chapter. I've seen people theorizing that, at least from how the domain looks, it has elements of the Chimera Shadow Garden and even Kenjaku's domain within it, but that's just people theorizing. At least from what Sukuna said, all he said was Malevolent Shrine and he summoned his domain. The reason it looks so crazy is because it's an incomplete domain, and this is where it's gonna get very crazy. The narrator explains that after hitting 2 black flashes, Gojo constructed a special reverse curse technique circuit due to being in an awakened state. Sukuna was supposed to regenerate all of his arms, but due to Yuji's 7 black flashes, it's pretty interesting that it says 7 not 8. I'll get into that later. The narrator continues saying Sukuna couldn't regain his reverse curse technique output, but Sukuna instantly uses domain expansion Malevolent Shrine. The narrator further says that despite including uncertain elements and including binding vows, Ryomen Sukuna had replicated Malevolent Shrine without dropping its effective range or output after experiencing the black flashes. So whatever these binding vows are, we'll learn later. I mean, we kind of get a hint at it at this chapter, where the narrator reveals that Sukuna can't maintain this high level domain for a long time, and also he cannot capture Maki, who has no cursed energy within his domain. And it says that Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine will collapse after 99 seconds. It's important to note that we know that it will collapse after 99 seconds, but everyone else, mainly Yuji, don't know this. This is something that the narrator is telling us and they don't know it. It reminds me of how the narrator said that, I can't remember the exact number, but it was something like in 33 seconds or in 27 seconds, Gojo's Hollow Purple will scar Shinjuku. The narrator saying that it will collapse in 99 seconds, it could be in reference to the fact that Sukuna can't maintain the high level domain for a long time. It could be because of that and because of the binding vows, but also it could be in reference to perhaps someone else collapsing Sukuna's domain within the next 99 seconds, meaning it could be possible that Yuji may use his domain and also break Sukuna's own domain within the next 99 seconds. Again, it could be either or, you know, whether you think it's Yuji who's going to collapse it within the next 99 seconds, or it's just the fact that Sukuna can't maintain it for a long time, which the narrator did say, and that's the reason why it's going to collapse. That's up to you, because it could be that Sukuna made a binding vow to only keep it up for 99 seconds, and then after those 99 it will collapse, and that's how Sukuna was able to keep it at such a high range and also level of output despite the black flashes. That could have been the binding vow to make it only manifest for a shorter time. But it does cut Yuji, and it actually does cut Yuji's leg clean off, but Yuji, and it's very important to note, he doesn't heal it, but he reattaches it using a death painting technique. And this is something that I explained in an older video of mine, where I explained how Yuji has the death painting powers and Yuji would be able to reattach limbs. Really cool to see that theory in that video come true in this chapter, where Yuji does attach his limbs just like how Choso does, and just like how most of the death paintings should be able to do, as long as the blood is still attached. I think that's how Yuji is able to reattach it in a specific moment. But we also do learn that because of Yuji's unique body and him eating the death paintings, he's able to use reverse curse technique just like Choso, where it's very cost effective. So unlike everyone else where it consumes a large amount of cursed energy, for Yuji it doesn't take that much cursed energy. It probably still takes quite a lot, but not nearly as much as other characters. And I do believe that now Sukuna has summoned his domain expansion, the only way you're gonna beat this is if Yuji summons his own domain expansion, which he may be able to do after awakening via the Black Flash. And it would be really cool to finally see the Malevolent Shrine theories come true. I mean, it doesn't have to be Malevolent Shrine, it could be a Blood Domain or Blood Brothers Palace or something like that. That would be really cool as well. But regardless, I do believe we're gonna need to see a Yuji domain expansion, otherwise no one's gonna be able to stop this domain expansion. I mean, it's not just the domain, but it's the fact that Sukuna summoned the flames at the end of the chapter. And at least what I think may happen is, since Sukuna stopped these slashes at the end of the chapter and Yuji even thinks, oh, is the domain over? I think what was really going on is Sukuna was switching out the curse technique sure hit within the domain in real time. So we've never seen a sorcerer do this ever, but again, it's Ryomen Sukuna. He has a unique domain, there's very unique circumstances as the narrator said, and it's also an open domain, so maybe that plays a role. I have no clue, but the fact that the slashes stopped as Sukuna summoned his flames, I do believe that he's going to place the flames as the sure hit, and in the next chapter the main cast is going to get eviscerated by these flames, mainly Yuji, because it does seem like Sukuna is specifically targeting the output towards Yuji. And we've seen characters do this before, where Dagon, using his domain for the very first time, was instantly able to target 70% of his domain on Naobito, 30% on Naname, and 0% on Maki. So if Dagon is able to do that and it's his very first time summoning his domain, Sukuna can do that for a fact. So that's why in this chapter we see multiple characters using simple domain. We see Ino using it, we see Choso using, and we see Miwa, which is crazy. My goat Miwa came in. She came in and protected Maki with her simple domain, which is weird because the narrator said it couldn't trap Maki in the domain, but Miwa still came in to save Maki from the domain expansion, which is probably because Sukuna's domain can target even inanimate objects, I guess. But it says Maki's not a part of the domain. I guess Miwa came in anyway just in case to protect Maki, but everyone else's domain, Choso, Ino, and Miwa's, all still stay up, but Yuji's is the one that's instantly stripped away, and Yuji gets eviscerated by Cleaveness Mantle slashes. With the reason being, as I explained before, he likely focused specifically a massive chunk of the output on Yuji, so it could have been anywhere between 70, 80, or even 90% on Yuji, and the remaining percentages were split between the other sorcerers. And in the next chapter, when he uses his flames, he'll probably focus a high level of that output, if not all of it, on Yuji to completely eviscerate him. And it is pretty wild how, yes, he's finally bringing out the flames. This is something that not even Gojo could push Sukuna this far, though granted, the reason Sukuna didn't use his flames against Gojo wasn't because Gojo was weak, it was specifically because he had a game plan from the beginning to use Mahoraga to defeat Sukuna and to get a power-up. That was his plan right from the get-go all the way until the end, so that's why he didn't use the flames. It's a common misconception that people think, oh, the reason he didn't use any other techniques is because simply it wouldn't have been able to bypass the infinity, which is true, but do remember there were multiple instances within that fight where Gojo didn't have his infinity up, and these were the times when Sukuna destroyed Gojo's own domain expansion and when Sukuna's domain was still up, when Gojo was experiencing curse technique burnout. Now, it is important to note that Gojo did regain his curse technique by destroying part of his brain and healing a reverse curse technique, but there were still a good maybe 10-20 seconds when Gojo didn't have his curse technique there that Sukuna was just punching him up, so Sukuna could have easily used the flames in that moment, but again, that wasn't his game plan. But it does seem like Yuji is finally pushing Sukuna to use everything he has. He is making Sukuna go all out, which is great to see. It is exactly what we wanted to see from Yuji, and I, for one, really cannot wait to see just what happens in the next chapter, and I hope to God we get more from Sukuna's curse technique, and we also get to see Yuji using the flames and hopefully also his domain expansion. But hey, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, it helps out a lot, thank you, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for a ton of consistent and quality JJK content just like this. Like I said in the intro, less than 10% of people who watch my videos are subscribed, so if you love JJK, I assure you, you won't get subscribing. And of course, thank you to all the channel members as well. It is always much appreciated, guys. Thank you very much, but that's all from me. Have a great day and take care.